Ooh, here we go. The fourth VD podcast. Welcome, Josh.
Hey.
Halcro in the house.
Good to be here, man.
That's fantastic to have you in from all the way from Margate. Welcome back to London.
Back to London, yeah, exactly.
How's the head today?
Not too bad, not too bad.
I'm incredibly hungover following a very, very successful night at VD24 last night. It's a good night.
Very good night. Socially distance.
Socially distant, only 6 people at a table, etc., etc. Don't come looking at us with fines. But yeah, it was a good night. Your reading went down really well.
Well, yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, you got a big
That's what people
round
said.
of applause.
Yeah.
They're almost buying you drinks. What are you going to read first?
So first, I've got a story. I call it "Tomorrow Is What." You won't get to the bit where that will make sense. I wrote it for a competition for Thanet, the Thanet writers.
Oh yeah.
They had a competition to set a story in Thanet and to have something weird happen. And I knew it where, when you know that there's a deadline and you spend loads of time working on the story, and I really thought something's going to happen, and it's just like nothing. It didn't even go to the second round or anything. Awful. But yeah, it was...
Swines. They don't know what they missed.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see how good it is when I actually read it out. I haven't read it in a long time. Okay. I was writing this in May. I was trying to... Because it was when I just first obviously moved down to Thanet. And it was about just trying to write something about somebody that lives in Thanet. You know what I mean? As opposed to writing stuff that's set in another country, or set in like Portugal, for example, like I'm writing, or even in London. It was nice to see about getting in that headspace.
Cool. Take it away.
Okay. I didn't want to move into a place at the top of a hill, especially one so steep. From Dame Park, you can see it over the trees, the bulging road rising like a whale's scalloped hump breaching grey water. I said to Bella, "I thought you wanted a bike for your birthday." "I do. Imagine riding up that monster every day. Imagine riding down it every day," she said, almost screaming. It's my fault we had to move, even though Bruce is the one who told us to move out, to move in with him until it became too real. I blame myself, though. He's the one who lives on a boat. So I signed the new contract, 6 months and rolling, because God knows how quick things can change. "The world's gonna end," an old woman says to me, waiting for the bus in Cecil Square. She leans her weight on her wheelie basket. "Ain't you heard?" "I don't watch the news." "It's not in the news," she says. "My niece told me." But she's silenced by hissing bus brakes. "This is me," I say. "Oh, where you going?" she asks, like I know her. I probably will end up knowing her. Bus stops are like that. "Sar," I say, as the doors close. Finding my seat, I catch eyes with the old woman through the rear window. She's in the middle of the road, pointing at me, mouth open. Bella texts me, 12:30 sharp, everything's okay at school. Year 6 is easy and she can't wait for Year 7, for big school. She likes homework and knows her times tables and prefers pointless to the chase. I don't know where she gets it from. What I'm good at is cleaning. I like it how you can see what you've done, a physical representation of work completed and work to go. When I worked in Budgeons, a 3-aisle mini-market, a glorified corner shop, my manager used to say, "If you've got nothing to do, then pretend you're working." And I used to think, "Hey, why don't you pretend I'm working, and then we can all be happy." With cleaning, it's dirty or it's not. And I can listen to stuff while I work, podcasts, interesting conversations between people who know what they're talking about or did a good job sounding like it. Then it was true crime all the time, until they started giving me bad dreams. Now I just clean, and with every passing second count the pennies dropping into my account. For her birthday, Bella had asked for a 7-speed. 7-speed, I'd said. "What do you need to go 7 speeds for?" "You said it, Mum," Bella replied. "I need it for the hills." We were outside the bike shop on North Down Road, heads tilted to read the price tags hanging from the handlebars. "When I was a kid, we only had 2 speeds, I said, fast and slow. My agency said all the cleaning products and equipment will be supplied. They said I was going to an office, not a house, and they needed me only for the day. SAR Business Centre, a converted farmhouse, tractors swapped for Toyotas, mounds of shit swapped for mounds of paperwork. As I step to knock the door, I hear rushing inside. It swings open. "Krista, from Cleaning Angels?" "That's me." "Thank God," he says. "I'm Pete. We've only just moved everything in. Sorry about the mess." He runs his hand over his hairless head. Behind the main desk, a sign reads Bintax. Sounds like a company only other companies would know about. The men could be lumberjacks, beards and boots and Carhartt hats. The woman behind the main desk, with a bandana in her hair, looks like she does pottery. But desk jockeys are all the same, no matter what, scurrying about with cardboard boxes, Desks scattered with paper, ears pressed to shoulders, taking 2 calls at a time. Pete leads me across the office floor. He opens the door into the break room, a depressing table and 6 anxious chairs. He hunched in the corner. The coffee machine stands in time-out, guilty of the rust-coloured coffee water and milk covering the floor. Someone's had a go at it with kitchen towel. What happened? Earthquake, he says, as if he doesn't believe it either. Here in Kent? Don't ask, he says. Do you need help bringing your equipment in? I was told you had the equipment. Oh, not today. Peter deflates like a balloon at a funeral. This can't be happening. I help him sit down. If you have some washing up liquid, I can start, but to get all that milk out the carpet, you need a strong vacuum cleaner. It's all falling apart, he says, bottom lip wobbling. Let me call the agency. They can send one over, right? Might take an hour or so, I say. Why don't I go to the shops and grab some bits to get started on this now? Thank you, Krista. England is the same everywhere I go. You'd think it'd be different, but Kent, Essex, London, everywhere I've lived looked the same, felt the same, smelled the same. Nothing special, like so much in life. Bruce texts me asking if I'm okay. It's not your job to care about that anymore, I reply. I'm serious. Weird stuff's been happening. I want to see you. He lives in Sandwich, works at a Pete's place, and, lives on a boat. A big boat with a sail and everything, not those ones you see puttering along canals. With Bruce, weird stuff is always happening. Krista, can we talk? I thought we talked already, remember? I almost tell him about the job and the apparent earthquake, but I prefer clean breaks. An earthquake, though. Sounds mad even in my head. I text Bella asking if she's okay, and she texts back too quickly. I'm okay, what's wrong? Nothing, just checking you're safe. I'm fine. You're not texting in class, are you? I'm on the loo. Remember to wash your hands. It's cold out. No clouds. The sea wind keeps everything fresh, always reminding you it's there. There's no shops around here, not within walking distance, so I go to the Crown Inn where they kindly give me a bucket of everything I need. On the way back, I pick through the fields behind the business centre. I hear a dog barking and a man shouting. I follow a trodden path leading to a fast-flowing river. Downstream, amongst spindly trees on the other side, a shaggy yellow retriever barks over the rushing water. The owner is calling out for George, the dog, to jump and swim. He's wet to the waist. Are you okay? I ask. What happened? I don't know, he says, never looking at me, always at George. I think the river's getting bigger. You mean like a flood? Come on, Georgie boy, you can do it. George tippy-taps to the edge of the bank, but bows in confusion and barks his incessant bark. What about the lead, I say? Use it as a lasso. I didn't see a bridge nearby. How did they get separated? You said it was a flood. Standing over the edge, I try to figure the water, how deep it is. It's flowing fast like it's late for something important, and George seems further away now, and the swim seems less and less doable. They're expecting me back at Bintax, but this man is on the verge of crying. Off the path, in the thickets and the bushes, I search for long branches. I grab for bigger ones hanging from the arms of a tall tree. I tug on a branch, a long skeletal branch George could maybe bite onto. It snaps me back and I stumble, pushing my falling weight on the trunk of the tree, but it falls with me, my hands on the bark as it tumbles forward. The noise it makes is brilliant, like hearing Mother Nature roar. The man looks over to me, like the woman at the bus stop, as the tree falls and lands. A bridge across the river, George runs over, whining, ignored by the man who stares at me, mouth open. Who are you? He says. I don't know, I say, talking about the tree. I look at the roots, how there's no mud. It just fell. It was like there was nothing underneath it. The man gets on his knee and kisses George as he leashes him up. So, you said it was a flood? I ask. No, I said the river's getting bigger. He loves to swim here. It's never been like this. This is like the sea. What do you mean? The water rages. I've never been here before. Not this, that's for sure. He glances at the fallen tree, then at me. Thank you so much, he says. He bows, then heads off. Back at Bintax, the front door is open. No one asks me what took so long. I call after Pete. His head is red with all the rubbing. Just go, the secretary stops me. This place is cursed. Inside, there are a bunch of headless chickens prattling about their desks, squawking about rent and money burning up before their very eyes. They moved in last week, and already an earthquake has happened. 6 months and rolling. I knew I was right. Take a half day, she says. We can't get the Hoover thing. Most of the roads are closed. I've got a daughter, I play. I don't do half days. I'll say to the agency, you work the whole day. How's that? Deal, I say. Bintax was his dream, he tells me, sad eyes on Pete, as I'm turning to leave before anything else can happen. When the ATEX driver lights a cigarette and leans against the front of the bus, I ask, changing drivers? Cancelled service, he says. What happened? Something to do with the roads. They don't tell me nothing. I try calling Bella, but no answer. I pray and pray it's because she's left it in the cloakroom like I tell her to. An emergency always helps you figure out who you're close to. I scroll through my contacts. I need to make some friends. Do you think you can pick me up, please? Buses are down. I need to get home. My thumb hovers before pressing send. Give me the address, Bruce replies. The window ekes open on Bruce's Saab. Bella once said it looks like the car's kid's drawer, and now I can't unsee it. Sorry I'm late. Nightmare getting here. Half the roads are shut. The inside of the car smells like pizza and cardboard. I've told him to get some smells dangling on the rear view, for everyone's sake. We sit in that awkward car silence. His hands not in his lap, a complicated sailor's knot. So how's the new place? He asks. It's fine, I say. We have a garden. The car crunches into gear and we drive off. And how have you been holding up? Don't patronise me, I say. Bella misses you. I think she liked having a boy around for once. He blindly rifles in the door. Speaking of Bella, he gives me a card written out to her. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Thinking what to say, I gaze out the window. People are on their phones, every single one. Phones to their eyes, phones to their ears, looking up and looking around. I think something's going on, I say. God, let Bella call me, please. I know what you mean. I've had this feeling, you know. Weird stuff's been happening. I need to talk to someone about it. Right, I say. There was this tree, yeah, and it just fell. I didn't even push it hard. What are you on about? Weird stuff. I'm talking about weird stuff in my life. I've been having these dreams, these visions, you know, almost every night of sailing to Africa. 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 On your boat. On any boat, Krista. He grabs the steering wheel and his knuckles pop white. You don't understand. Maybe I don't. It's about getting away, going somewhere new. It's not that easy. Have you even tried? Tried what? Doing something like adventurous, carefree. I can't sail away from my responsibilities, Bruce. He's flustered and sighs, like I'm this big disappointment. What responsibilities? You're just a cleaner, for God's sake. We come to a stop outside my flat. I take a breath. He takes a breath too, as if there is information about me in the air. I've got Bella to look after. That's all I care about. Not you or what you think about my life. I'm not embarrassed by what I do. I'm only trying to tell you, he says and sighs. Maybe I was wrong. About what? You, maybe. I don't know. It's just you've got the job and the kid and now the flat. I'm sorry. You didn't want to move in. Fair enough. We can make it work, but it's not only me that needs to, I swear to God, if you say change, you know what I mean. I kick off my shoes. My feet hum. Isabella, he's written on the envelope. I shake it, pinch it. With a kitchen knife, I peel the paper from the glue. He chose a cute one. Too pink, though. Pink princess with pink frills and glittery stars. His one last slap in the face. Glitter on my fingers and on my floor forever. The car is signed BX. Not even a fiver. Not even a couple of quid sellotaped to the blank page. I seal the envelope. Bella finally texts saying she'll be home soon, so now I can relax. Tomorrow is Saturday. It's not like me to wait until morning to clean out Bella's lunchbox. I throw away the tin foil, the meat sticks plastic, the string cheese packet, not before I've read the facts on the back. Today, seagulls are responsible for 90% of all muggings in the Thanet area. What? Must be a joke, not a fact. But so specific? To hear? She digs into the bin to make sure, but the words on the packet are squiggly lines moving like little fish, and that's when she's at sea, and the wind is in her hair, and Bruce is there with his fucking boat. His mouth opens and a foghorn sounds. Mum! Bella is tugging on my shoe. Mum! Your alarm's been ringing for ages! What time is it, I say, before I'm even awake. 9:15, she checks. 16. Is it Saturday? She looks up. Yes. Quick! When I say quick to her, I mean quick to me. She's already got her shoes on, the ones with the gel in the heel, because they're like so comfortable, Mum. I savour these days of Bella caring about function over fashion. I brush my teeth without toothpaste so I don't have to spit. I conduct Bella with my wagging finger. Baby wipes. Thumbs up yes, thumbs down no. Not the keys, the hairband. I wipe my armpits and tie my hair. The mess in the kitchen sink reminds me to wash up straight after dinner because every time I leave it for the next morning something always comes up. Where are we going? Bella says, out of breath. As she speed walks behind me, I thought you wanted a lazy morning, she says. It's my fault, darling. I should have told you. I got a new job walking a little doggy. We should have been at Mrs. McClary's 9 on the dot. We turn the corner, left and right. It's number 34. Outside, I pat my pockets for the keys. Did you get the keys, Bill? No. Sugar. Mercifully, the front door opens. Mrs. McClary stands on the step, Rufus in her arms. His pink tongue flaps up past his crimped moustache, tasting Mrs. McClary's earlobe. Krista, thank you so much for coming, she says. Oh, Mrs. McClary, I didn't know you'd be home. She's in pyjamas and a toweling robe. Behind her, dust hangs in the air above cardboard boxes stacked in the corner. I should start my own business. Get a card. Krista's Crystal Clean Cleaning. No. Haven't you heard about what happened last night? I didn't think you'd come. What? It's crazy, really. I couldn't believe it. Never heard anything so ridiculous in my life. She talks as she plops Rufus down to collar him up. Rufus sits wonky on his legs and to say thank you gives her a kiss. They said we're moving like a ship. Sorry? We're all moving. She waves her arms about. Bella holds my hand. We've left England, the island. Good riddance. I take the leash from her and 2 poo bags. I smile and walk backwards, careful not to turn my back in case she bites me or Bella or something. I'll have him back in an hour. Is that okay, Mrs. McClary? I say slowly and considerately. Don't speak to me like I'm mental, she says, and slams the door. Is she okay, Mum? People get old, Bill. It's easy to sit around and moan. It's the doing that's the hard part. Like picking up all the poop on the street in Cliftonville. I swear to God it's a minefield. I'm screaming at Bella, poop, poop alert! It's fun. Bella calls me Inspector Poop, until you think about it. The bastards who do this. Bella had the idea to set up poop stations on the lampposts on North Down Road for people to take one if they need. My mum said being a parent can make you bitter and moany, so be careful. But Bella, she always sees the silver lining of the storm cloud, even if she's having a picnic. As we pass the bowling alley before Walpole Bay, seagulls jeer at us. They flap their wings, but stay in the same spot, waiting and waiting. I pat my purse, safely zipped into my coat. Try me, seagull, I dare you. I taste sea spray on my lips. The air is thick with it. Down the steps, on the path to the beach, I let Rufus off the leash. Bella says, Wow, Mum, look! She's not talking about the ships that usually dock in the sea before us, how they sit, perched on the water, those gigantic metal dinosaurs. Because at the end of the path, cutting through the cliffs, there are no boats, only blurred sea and sand. The lapping tide doesn't lazily slap forward like a tired tongue. Instead, it's a rolling, crushing wave, tearing from right to left. What did Mrs. McClary say again, Belle? She said we're moving like a ship and we've left England. Bella waves her arms about. Good riddance. The water breaks different at the turn before Botany Bay, marked by the pumping station on the cliff edge. It's working, gears are chinking and churning, hisses and whistles, an engine pumping and steaming. We turn onto Botany Bay, the nose of the ship, where the water splits as the Isle of Thanet sails to an unknown destination. What's going on, Mum? I have no idea. What's up there?
Oh yeah, I love that. It's that kind of collision of like we've got a very kind of mundane job, right? It's a cleaner, and then we've got the kind of the earth. The second you bring in earthquakes,
in Kent, yeah.
It's instantly kind of literally putting people on kind of unstable ground. I haven't heard you often use kind of like very large kind of events like that.
I know, yeah. Usually it's all very much like tucked away in like, the things that are unsaid or like a little metaphor about emotions or whatever. But I just thought it's Thanet. It was for like Thanet, so I just thought it'd just be this big thing, just like, fuck it, yes, there's a woman just doing her job and there's an earthquake. It's like, fucking earthquake, I've got a job to do, I have to catch the bus. The driver's not there to drive the bus because it's an earthquake. Oh, how do I get home? It's not this like huge focus on the big thing. It's like, okay, there's big things happening, but I need to do these things here and now. And it's weird because I wrote the story, and I think it wasn't during lockdown, or it wasn't when the coronavirus was all crazy. But then as I started to write the story and about this big event and how people are just living their lives and how some people are reacting to it like, oh my God, it's an earthquake, and some people just getting on with it. And then later on in the story, there are people out like protesting and people are blaming it on Brexit and all this kind of stuff. and they're sailing to Holland, and people are like, oh, at least we're not going to France, you know.
Yeah, no, I love the image as well of Botany Bay, because it's like Dover, it's like the White Cliffs of Dover.
Yes,
kind of
yeah.
The helm of the ship is kind of like, okay, they're leaving England, but they're very much a kind of very English setup. And it kind of matches with what's happened with the characters as well, doesn't it? Because she's kind of leaving this guy who wants to sail away himself.
Yes, exactly. And the whole point for her, it was kind of like she gets a chance to sail away. And there's this one bit where when they're sailing and she's watching the news and Bella's watching the news and she's like, Mum, isn't that? And then it's like this like shot of Bruce on a boat saying like, I'm sorry, and he's like chasing after the island. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was this sort of like absurdity in the very simple like working class life. Yeah. That was something that I really enjoy doing, and it's something that I got a lot from Lucia Berlin, because it's these lives where, you know, like at the beginning of this one where she's just talking about being at a bus stop and the things are at the bus stop. But then the crazy things that happen in the lives of people that are having to work so much that you're just blind to a lot of stuff, because you just like, I need to get to work. You know, you sit down at the bus stop, some guy's like drunk over there, you just phase it out, because I just need to get on the bus, go to work, do my thing. Yeah. You know, that's something that I've always been interested in stories. It's just the normal people doing like the normal things, and then something entering into it and just totally shaking it up. You know.
Well, I think in that story and in that writer you were talking about there, often it's kind of like, even though they're living very normal lives, they're extraordinary in so many ways. I mean, like even the kind of that insight you had, you know, pretend you're working.
Yeah.
Can't you just pretend that I'm...
Yeah. Well, it's not mine. Bill Hicks's insight.
Yeah, it's brilliant. But like in that one, which one is it? The
Lucia Berlin.
How to be
a manual for cleaning women. It's the same name as the collection.
Moment, like there's a couple of moments in the story where she notices the stuff like I think it's a sign or something for the blind, and all the things have fallen off apart from the blind one. Yeah. It's like these little pertinent details are kind of like bringing out of the mundane. It's kind of like,
well, it's what you see, isn't it?
Details that somebody notices makes even the most.
Because it's like, why? Like for me, it's all about the person. Like for example, the character in the book, the person who they are sees the things that only they would see. You know, in terms of what their perception is. It won't be that they're looking. For example, you know, if I'm sitting here, I'll say, you know, if I leave the room and I'll say 5 things that I saw, it's going to be different every person that you ask, because we just see different things. And I think what Lucia Berlin does, what she sees is a lot like Raymond Carver. You know, he's got that line where he's like, you know, you can endow like a fork or a spoon or a curtain with like loads of power if it's placed in the right sentence, in the right paragraph in a story. And I've always been so struck by that line, you know, just like so much power can be given to just like a fork, like in a paragraph.
I think that's something in your writing and in Lucia Berlin, that kind of like, there's a cleanness to the kind of, like the language is never the thing itself, it's always kind of what's being shown to you often it kind of feels like without comment. Do you know what I mean? It's like just a fork, and it's the way the fork is seen or placed that you can infer kind of the emotion from it without there being actually very much kind of, it's not purple, it's never kind of
I think it definitely comes with the bad side as well, you know, where you're too cold and there's too much inference, and it's so mysterious that it turns opaque. You know, where it's just that you can't penetrate the story because it's so flat. You know, I think when I started to write, because of Hemingway, you start with nothing, and then you sort of like, as you learn to write and as you sort of like, you know, read other people, you play around with voice, you start to sort of pack on more. And I think that's for me anyway, that was a good way of doing it. I think a lot of new writers that I read especially, they will be interested, like I was reading the story of this one guy the other day, and he said he's really into Lolita, so immediately it's going to be like, you know, just filled with like long rambling sentences, like only he can do that, you know. Only he can start with like, you know, this big massive thing. Because when you're first starting out, if you are inclined to write purple, it's so much worse than if you're a new writer that just writes, he went downstairs, you know, like he took a drink and looked into the garden, you know, like, oh, mysterious power, but you just said nothing. Whereas in the other one where it's super like purple, if you don't have that natural voice, it just comes across as totally put
There's
on.
nowhere to hide.
You
can't hide behind the sparse kind of pared back.
That's also true. Yeah, I always find that a lot of the time when I'm trying to use fancy words, I don't even know what they are. Yeah. So I can't. I'm reading these words. I know what they mean. I'm like, how's this person known to put that word there? You know, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, interesting. Do you want to read a bit of Lucia?
Yeah, let me do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. 42 Piedmont. Slow bus to Jack London Square. Maids and old ladies. I sat next to an old blind woman who was reading Braille, her fingers gliding across the page, slow and quiet, line after line. It was soothing to watch, reading over her shoulder. The woman got off at 29th, where all the letters had fallen from the sign, National Products by the Blind, except for blind. 29th is my stop too, but I have to go all the way downtown to cash Mrs. Jessel's cheque. If she pays me with a cheque one more time, I'll quit. Besides, she never has any change for car fare. Last week, I went all the way to the bank with my own quarter and she had forgotten to sign the cheque. She forgets everything, even her ailments. As I dust, I collect them and put them on her desk. 10 a.m, nausea, SP, on a piece of paper on the mantel. Diarrhea on the drain board. Dizzy, poor memory on the kitchen stove. Mostly, she forgets if she took her phenobarbital or not, and that she has already called me twice at home to ask if she did, where her ruby ring is, etc. She follows me from room to room, saying the same things over and over. I'm going as cuckoo as she is. I keep saying I'll quit, but I feel sorry for her. I'm the only person she has to talk to. Her husband is a lawyer, plays golf, and has a mistress. I don't think Mrs. Jessel knows this, or remembers. Cleaning women know everything. It is the superfluity that finally gets to you. We don't want to change. We don't want the change in the little ashtrays. Some lady at a bridge party somewhere started the rumour that to test the honesty of a cleaning woman, you leave little rosebud ashtrays around with loose change in them here and there. My solution to this is to always add a few pennies, even a dime. The minute I get to work, I first check out where the watches are, the rings, the gold lame evening purses. Later, when they come running in all puffy and red-faced, I just say coolly, under your pillow, behind the avocado toilet. All I really steal is sleeping pills, saving up for a rainy day. Today I stole a bottle of Spice Islands sesame seeds. Mrs. Jessel rarely cooks. When she does, she makes sesame chicken. The recipe is pasted inside the spice cupboard. Another copy is in the stamp and string drawer, and another is in her address book. Whenever she orders chicken, soy sauce and sherry, she orders another bottle of sesame seeds. She has 15 bottles of sesame seeds. 14 now. At the bus stop, I sat on the curb. 3 other maids, black in white uniforms, stood above me. They were old friends, have worked on Country Club Road for years. At first, we were all mad. The bus was 2 minutes early and we missed it. Damn. He knows the maids are always there, that the 42 Piedmont only runs once an hour. I smoked while they compared booty, things they took, nail polish, perfume, toilet paper, things they were given, 1 earrings, 20 hangers, torn bras. Advice to cleaning women: take everything that your lady gives to you and say thank you. You can leave it on the bus, in the crack. To get into the conversation, I showed them my bottle of sesame seeds. They roared with laughter. Oh, child, sesame seeds? They asked me how come I've worked for Mrs. Jessel so long. Most women can't handle her for more than 3 times. They asked if it is true she has 140 pairs of shoes. Yes, but the bad part is, most of them are identical. The hour passed pleasantly. We talked about the ladies we each work for. We laughed, not without bitterness. I'm not easily accepted by most old-time cleaning women. Hard to get cleaning jobs too because I'm educated. Sure as hell can't find any other jobs right now. Learned to tell the ladies right away that my alcoholic husband just died, leaving me and the 4 kids. I'd never worked before, raising the children and all. 43, Statok, Berkeley. The benches that say saturation advertising are soaking wet every morning. I asked the man for a match, and he gave me the pack. Suicide prevention. They were the dumb kind with the striker on the back. Better safe than sorry. Across the street, the woman at Spotless Cleaners was sweeping her sidewalk. The sidewalks on either side of her flaccid with litter and leaves. It is autumn now, in Oakland. Later that afternoon, back from cleaning at Horowitz's, the spotless sidewalk was covered with leaves and garbage again. I dropped my transfer on it. I always get a transfer. Sometimes I give them away. Usually I just hold them. Tur used to tease me about how I was always holding things all the time. Say, Maggie May, ain't nothing in this world you can hang on to, except me maybe. One night on Telegraph, I woke up to feel him closing a Coors flip-top in my palm. He was smiling down at me. Terry was a young cowboy from Nebraska. He wouldn't go to foreign movies. I just realised this because he couldn't read fast enough. Whenever Ter read a book, rarely, he would rip each page off and throw it away. I would come home to where the windows were always open or broken and the whole room would be swirling with pages like a Safeway lot pigeons. 33, Berkeley Express. The 33 got lost. The driver overshot the turn at Sears from the freeway. Everybody was ringing the bell, blushing. He made a left on 27th. We ended up stuck in a dead end. People came to their windows to see the bus. 4 men got out to help him back between the parked cars on the narrow street. Once on the freeway, he drove about 80. It was scary. We all talked together, pleased by the event. Linda's today. Cleaning women, as a rule, never work for friends. Sooner or later, they resent you because you know them so much, or else you'll no longer like them because you do. But Linda and Bob are good old friends. I feel their warmth even though they aren't there. Cum and blueberry jelly on the sheets. Racing forms and cigarette butts in the bathroom. Notes from Bob to Linda. Buy smokes and take the car. Doo-dah, doo-dah. Drawings by Andrea with love to Mum. Pizza crusts. I clean their Coke mirror with Windex. What's that there?
Cool.
So I think, yeah, in just in that first bit, because there isn't much that happens. And it's the same thing, because I got onto her through, I found it in a bookshop, and I looked on the back, and when it said,
find.
yeah,
Oh,
it
right.
said her work has been compared to Alice Munro, Raymond Carver, and I was like, okay, I just took it.
So
Yeah, exactly. And it's, you know, that's how I read when I first started reading. That's how I found books, just by having a book that I liked and then reading on the back who they
it's like
liked.
a little treasure trove, isn't it? Like you follow the trail.
Yeah, you follow the trail, and there's all these like groupings of writers who
Yeah.
write in a specific way.
Yeah.
But reading the beginning of that, I realised it's so similar to what I wrote. I must have been just
No, well,
like
it's similar,
totally
you
drawing
can
from
see
it.
the links. Well, it's the way she notices detail. I mean, that's what makes it entertaining. Like it might seem quite a mundane setup.
Yeah.
But it's like her perception of these events is anything but mundane.
Exactly, and it's the point of view
extraordinary,
that's
but-
new and it's exciting, and it's like those little lines that she has. Where is it? Where she talks about all I really steal is sleeping pills, saving up for a rainy day. They're just these
setting up
lines.
It
Yeah.
sets up a bit of tension because
Yeah.
like, well, hang on, what's she going to do with these? Suicide, probably. Right?
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
I'm thinking.
But it never gets that there's this like the sinister cleaning women know everything. You know, it's like those little throwaway lines at the end of something that is something that I took, especially I think if I was thinking back to the story that I just read, I was trying to think of a line. You know, when I was a kid, we had 2 speeds, fast and slow.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
just
yeah.
those little that's her perspective of what's happening of
Like
the event.
throwaway, like in terms of their delivery, but they're so pregnant with meaning.
Yes,
It says
yeah.
a lot about them.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's really American as well, the vibe of it, isn't it? The kind of the bus and the
I'm
kind
so
of,
placed when I read her in like a sort of like, because I've been to Arizona and it's just I'm there when I'm reading her, because she writes very much about the South, Southern California, Mexico, parts of Arkansas and like Texas, New Mexico and stuff, that kind of Breaking Bad territory, you know. And I just think because it has that Mexican flavor to it, because she's a woman that doesn't really give a shit. She's not like a I'm trying to say fancy woman, but she's not like an Anglo woman.
yeah.
You know, like those Mediterranean like obviously Latina is
She's not kind,
is
she's
kind
not
of the
this kind of
same.
Victorian lady like.
Yeah, it's she's very like just like she's just a person that's living that happens to be a woman that's just like living their life in that way. She's not like self-conscious about the fact, and it's not about her being a woman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's about her struggling to live her life.
Yeah.
And that's what I find super interesting, you know, as opposed to just reading about her being a woman. It's like, who cares, you know?
Yeah.
Got to make
Well,
it
it seems to
interesting.
be more about class. Well,
Well,
not
yeah,
class. As
yeah.
in, not because I know in America it's not really classist, but it is about money, right? And she's
Oh yeah, for sure. It's well, they like to say it's not classist, but it pretty much
Classist, big
is.
time.
Yeah, it's like what the life that she lived, not just that the life that the characters live inside of all of her stories, but the life that she lived. It's just it reflects exactly what you're talking about. Just being like drunk and like, you know, poor and bumming around America.
yeah.
Being able to talk about it in that way really made me feel comfortable in talking about where I live,
Yeah.
as opposed to having to go somewhere else in my writing
Yeah.
to talk about where I am.
It's a cool job to give a character as well, isn't it? Because they get to go into other people's
Yes.
spaces, and so you get to describe stuff about characters. Again, it's those very pertinent details about other people's lives, like cleaning their Coke mirror with a Windex.
Yes,
or whatever. Like,
exactly.
that places those people in my mind very clearly of the kind of people they are. Or even like and then these little kind of workarounds, like move all their furniture later. Isn't she says when you clean someone's house the first time, move their furniture just a little bit around so that they know that you've cleaned everything.
Oh yeah. Or she said
leave
about put more money in the pot that they leave out to
So-
see if you steal.
So she's kind of managing their expectations. Same as that line from Bill Hicks, where he's like, "Why don't you pretend that I'm pretending?" To
Yeah,
it's that kind of like, okay, my job is not only to clean these people's houses, but it's to also manage their perception of how I'm cleaning their house. So
Make it look as if I'm
make
doing
it
it. Yeah.
look and like you just accept it, like this is what they're gonna do. You're not gonna fight with them about.
Yeah, but it's
the fact
because
that
it's
you're
the
setting a trap.
it's the idea of entering into someone else's home, which there are so many
Quite
stories.
gothic that. in a
Yeah,
way. It's
yeah,
an
I've always
intrusion into
been-
the domestic.
It was Raymond Carver's story, Neighbours, that I see, especially when she's going into the other person's house, stealing the pills. This could have come like this could be the woman in the story of Neighbours, you know, like in like the same kind of voice.
Yeah.
Where I'm not sure if you know Neighbours. You know Neighbours.
No, I've never read it.
Neighbours. Oh, it's the story that Raymond Carver wrote and sent in to Gordon Lish, who was the editor for the magazine. I can't remember which one. And when he read it, he was like, "Send me everything you've got." Is this the one? Yeah, exactly. He read it and it was just like, you know, send everything. And it's about these guys that I think they must be like landlords or something, or they just live in this house, and their neighbours go they go on holiday, and they ask, "Oh, could you go in and feed the cat?" And they're like richer than the people that are the characters in the story. So the guy goes in and he sees all the stuff, and then he starts to wear the man's clothes, and then he comes back. The woman's there and she goes, "Oh, I need to go feed the cat," and then she's gone, and then he's like, "Why is she gone for so long?" And then she comes back and she's all red in the face. Basically, she went over there, she was like jerking it to these pictures that he then goes in and he finds. And then there's these great scenes where she's just by himself, he's in there, and then he's like trying on the clothes, then he tries on the women's clothes, and he's looking at himself in the mirror, and then he goes and he takes the sleeping pills. It's like that idea of being in somebody else's house, not without them knowing, but like being able to do what you want in somebody else's house. It's like weirdly, you like do things that you would never do in your own house.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're wearing somebody else's clothes or in somebody else's skin.
Like when you go and stay in an Airbnb somewhere and you stay in someone's house, it's like you can't help but start telling yourself a story about who the people are.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever had
No,
that?
always. Oh yeah, because we're always staying in Airbnbs, and if it's not just those like chop and change. When we were in France, we literally stayed in this guy's room. You know, like his kids were just there, and he's like, "Oh yeah, come stay." You know. Yeah. And it was very much. I was just thinking, what is this guy's life? And then you see inside, and it was just this French house, like on the side of the hill by a motorway in the middle of nowhere. And he's just got a kid, and he's got a wife, and they've got jobs. And I'm just trying to figure out their life. And when they went to work, we were walking through the house, and it was just like I try to imagine the life there of just like the dinners at the table, because all it was just like a dining room, a table, and a kitchen. Yeah. So it's just sitting around, like just being at the dinner table. Yeah. I was just imagining like having people around, the wine and the food, and having that
story
life.
Here, Josh.
Nah, yeah. I can't write about France. I'm not doing it. Yeah, no, it's you always get that when you're going to somebody else's house. When you go when you stay at someone else's house and you go into the shower, do you use all of the shower gels and shampoos?
Yeah, I would try the shampoo, definitely.
Yeah, I use all of them. I'm just like,
let's see what this does to the name.
yeah, all of them.
Making me look good today.
Yeah, just try out all the new smells.
Yeah.
Wash my hairs like 10
Where would
times.
you draw the line? Would you use someone's
Bar soap.
aftershave?
That's where I draw the line.
You wouldn't use the bar soap. Yeah, that's
Bar soap, yeah.
it's a
Toothbrush,
little-
the obvious ones. Yeah.
God. Yeah. You're not invited here ever again.
Yeah.
Never staying at my house. You use my shower gel. Fucking weirdo. What are you gonna read next?
Okay. Let me sort this out.
Something new of your own? Or are you gonna
Something new of my own. Okay. What I'll do is, this is something that I literally wrote like 2 or 3 days ago.
Oh, cool.
Straight. This is directly after
Yeah.
what I read last night
Oh, cool.
at VD. So what I'll do is,
This is the Portuguese stuff, the new novel.
yes. So it's like the way that I'm seeing it now is not as a novel, is as the chapbook. You know, that competition I told you about.
Yeah.
So it's like 25 to 40 pages, novelette kind of, novella thing. That's what I'm aiming for, because I don't want to have a novel. I don't want to like commit to a novel yet, because it's so much work. So I'm just playing.
Years, isn't it?
Yeah, well, 3 years so far,
Years,
still not
3 years
finished.
counting.
Yeah, and counting. I don't want to commit to it, but I'm also using a voice. So what you'll see here in this one is the tense shift, because it's recounted in past tense, and you stay in past tense throughout the other memories. So it's in past tense for when he was a kid in Portugal, and when he was even younger in London. But it pulls back to the present in this scene.
Cool.
And it's the present. I'm thinking is like in the 90s in Lisbon,
Yeah.
because that was like the peak of the heroin and AIDS crisis, the highest in Europe. I couldn't believe it. In the 70s is where we begin. So 73, 74, not quite decided on the exact year, but the revolution was 74, the 25th of April in 74. Nobody died. It's called the Carnation Revolution. All the military got together and they walked through the streets of Lisbon, and all the people in the streets, they came out. This woman, she was working in a cafe, and she had all these carnations because she was doing something. They got cancelled because there was a coup. So it's just like, okay, it goes out into the streets, and then she starts to put the flowers into the soldiers' guns and giving the flowers out to the soldiers. There's one woman in a little restaurant in Lisbon, and they walked up and they took over the government. The guy was hiding. My friend João, he actually walked me there like a couple of weeks ago when I was in Lisbon. He walked me up. It's in Bairro Alto, and I think it's now a museum or something. I think it's a museum or something like that. There's a facade, but there's nothing inside. I think because it got bombed or something. I don't know. But he took me to the square where all the soldiers were gathered, and they waited until the guy came out and just gave up. I just think not so many people don't know that there was just these like fascists.
Quite recent.
And yeah, so like
Spain, like he wouldn't
Yeah.
believe that Franco was
I know.
there until
Like
as late as he was.
exactly when I think about my mum's pretty young. She was born in the 70s, so she was 70. So she was born into a fascist regime. It's like, what? Like we say it like in the UK, people are like fascist. Like no, people actually lived like with fascists. You know what I mean? Because in Portugal in that time, you needed to have like what Salazar did. He effectively like sedated like the whole country. He didn't call himself fascist. It was like a corporatist regime, and he was like a priest. He didn't have a wife. He had this phrase called Deus, Patria and Familia, which means like God, fatherland and family. I might have got those mixed up between the two, but that was the general idea. And it's kind of like this trinity that he created himself. He had a little church inside of his like house where he'd go to and like pray and stuff. And the education was rubbish because all it was men go and work and the women stay at home and raise the kids, and that's how he wanted it. So Portugal just didn't like progress at all from like the 30s up to the 70s. It was just totally flat, barely any production, at the lowest rate of literacy in Europe. It's just like, it's crazy. Like my grandparents are illiterate. You know, they don't know. When I went to see my nan, she's got a little Nokia, and she's got a piece of paper with all of the numbers on it, and because she can't read, she draws how many children the kid has, that her kid has. So it would be like 3 little kids, and she knows that's Maria, you know. She calls them up, and the person that she sells chickens to, you know, she's drew a little chicken next to it. It's just like such like, you know, it's so practical, you know. It's a little piece of paper that she keeps next to her phone. But this sort of sedation led to a revolution that wasn't violent, and it's just for me that doesn't make sense. You know, it doesn't make sense that people could have done it in that way where nobody died.
Yeah, quite rare.
It's super rare, yeah. And I think that's what I want to talk about, because it's not this big like fascist overthrow book where it's like, you know, fighting and killing and like deception and all this, because it was very much just workers and soldiers, because it was such a sedated country. But anyways, what I'm going to read here is the ending of what I read last night, which is sort of the beginning, so we can call this like chapter 2 or whatever. Tonio leant his forearms against the wheel as he lit up another cigarette. His arms were deep brown, dark the same as the back of his neck, where the muscle firmly reached up behind his ear, hidden by the untamed horse-thick hair everyone seemed to have. He wouldn't have been out of place in an old western. He always spoke fast and from behind a cigarette, and whatever I did understand would be about the price of fish or the state of wine, or about licenses for radios, or about who's bought that fucking land overlooking my girlfriend's aldea. We drove up past the castle, the engine wheezing up the medieval roads. Up we went, up round the chorizo turns, the big U-bends in the road, crawling up the mountain face. The winding road grew sick in my stomach, and I said, I want to go back, choked in my throat, scared of the unknown, as we reached a straightening of the road, high above the city, where all there was olive trees, and what I thought a little white house. Not a house, a little stone structure like a miniature house, a metre tall with one room, and a front door, the wall high and wide. Tonio stopped and ruffled for his keys. I asked again, but he was tangled, and I asked once more, and he hissed, shut up. But kalat karalju. He jumped out the truck and went to open the padlocked door of the mini-house. I saw a flash of light as Tonio struck a match, and, while closing the door, a glimpse of the grave and pious downturned smile of Nossa Senhora de Fatima, the Virgin Mary, locked away on the mountainside. I didn't want to ask him why the statue was locked away, as if someone would steal her. It didn't cross my mind it could be to keep her in. We drove down paths where dust rose and fogged my view. I knew in my stomach we were far, moving farther, tugging at the cord connecting Ma to me. My heartbeat matched the gears, changing down from 5 to 1, slowing with the truck in a now darkened space. The lack of embrace of a woman's presence I keenly realised. Tonio's door squealed open and cracked shut. He walked around the back of the truck and opened my door, adjusting the strap on his overalls, which had fallen down while bumping on the dirt road. My guess was we were in a barn, tall like an old church, partitioned into areas for hay and horses and saddles and water. When I hopped out the truck, 3 uncles approached me, Tia Louise, Tia Carlos, and in the middle, Tia Manel, in brown pinstripe trousers and a vest tucked in, dusty loafers and no socks, led by a small lamb tied with a string. Tonio adjusted his suspenders and laughed. There was something dangerous about Tonio's energy, like those kids at school who screamed till their face went purple. A volatile, childish energy. This adult world I didn't understand, so far removed from the safe rooms governed by the women who I always knew were there if I cried, there to change my pants if I sold them. He ready or what? Tonio called, joining them in the semicircle before me. Tia Manel was the oldest brother, like a father to Ma and all the others. Ma said her father's soul never left the earth, it jumped into Manel instead. Since his death, Manel had worn the same clothes, smoked the same tobacco, walked with the same quiet swagger. Tia Manel approached me, the lamb under his arm like a sack of wine. Tonio licked his lips. You're a man now, Manel said. It's your turn to do it. He handed me a knife, with Jesus on the cross pressed into the blade. He put the lamb on its side and stroked the neck against the grain. He tissed hypnotically. The lamb froze, but not in fear, more in comfort, tickled gently to sleep. With 2 hands I gripped the blade. Manel drew his finger up and down in a line across the white neck, its square eyes empty and looking at nothing. I'd seen it done in my first week there, in the street outside the house, while cousins kicked a scabby leather ball and dogs walked from shade to shade. Ma slit a duck's neck and caught the blood in a jar. We had blood, rice and duck for dinner. The dogs licked the street clean. This was different though. A misunderstood ritual, sacrifice for action's sake where meaning is lost in the thrill of it. The thrill I saw Tonyu chewing in his smile as he helped me put pressure on the pink skin. We didn't catch this blood. It spilt into the dust and congealed under hay. Manel gripped the leg as it kicked and bleated until it didn't. He said a prayer, then strung up the lamb. Without a word, he tipped his head at me, letting me know I did all right. Pa had explained this to me. There's a picture in his book, actually. Let me show you. You don't really believe in all that shit, do you? Miguel says. His hand and nail tings when he flicks the syringe. Fucking religion, man. This is my religion. He signs the cross and kisses his hand. Eyes roll back, jaw clenches. Miguel leans against the wall while I flip over piles of clothes and check under blankets. Miguel doesn't even notice me moving the mattress to check underneath. Fucking religion, man. It's not like that. I've seen sacrifice. I've seen possession. I see it in Miguel's face, the crumpled smile of intense personal pleasure, the kind of pleasure you keep to yourself, like taking a nice shit or biting that thick toenail. And I know how Miguel checks his lighter every time before it hits the spoon. He rubs it between his hands where it clacks on his ring, clacks 10 times. A little musical intro to the main event. Clack, clack, clack. Miguel starts laughing. Not that fucking book again. Where is it, I say. He laughs. I don't. I'm not joking. I've seen it. A glimpse of what happens at Christmas. The masks and cold water, the candlelit house in the centre of the village, and the screaming black liquid poured and feathered. The banishing of sins before the new year. Miguel knows this by now. You talk about it so much, he says, laughing again, so I go over and slap him. You didn't sell it, did you? No one will buy that junk, he says. I slap him again, but stop because any more's too much. There aren't many places it could be. I turn over piles of junk Miguel keeps to sell. Hey, he calls out, waving the tinfoil wrap. You need a little something. You're stressing me out. Why would you ask me that? Why would you say that? Because now it's rattling around up in there. I can't search for the book, because his voice echoes under every piece of paper. You need a little something. Between all the toilet roll towers I push over, you need a little something. The phrase skips musically. You might as well, you might as well, you might as well. I discovered early on we weren't always who we are. I remember Ma's rage and how, in the breathless calm afterwards, she'd say, rocking me on her knee, tending my broken skin, I wasn't myself, Filio. I don't know what got into me. As if it wasn't her, as if someone else took over, got into her, maybe an earwig who crawled inside her head in the night. It's the same thing as me finding my space in the duvets, crossing my legs and holding my bare feet, feeding it between toes, and the falling back with my focus on the escudo of the Portuguese flag hanging over the window. The inevitable little routine. There we go, Miguel tisks hypnotically. Forget about that book. He blows hash smoke in my face. Tell me what happened.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, heroin is such a fucking... It's an interesting thing to have in a story, isn't it? Because it's like...
I was a bit nervous about delving into that whole, like, junkie heroin side. It's pretty inevitable, though.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, if you're going to write about, you know, that part of,
yeah, exactly.
Era,
Those peaks of the Portuguese history. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's a big thing in Dublin as well, you know. It's massive.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's been huge heroin problems in Dublin all the way up until now still. I mean, there's a very particular character that you'll see in Dublin city centre who's kind of, how you doing? Can you give me a euro for a hostel? I'm very hungry.
Yeah.
You know, and they kind of drift around the city like ghosts, you know, and they kind of, you can tell them like a million miles away. Because all the methadone clinics, nobody wants them in their neighbourhood, so they're all in the city centre.
Oh, okay.
So the whole gaggle of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Rocking around Store Street near Busaris, kind of where the bus station is. But I've always been amazed at kind of like in Dublin it's so visible, you know, and they're so, like I feel like in London maybe it's more spread out.
Yeah,
like,
it's
I
way
know
more
there is
spread
heroin,
out.
but it doesn't.
But not
seem
even
like,
in the city. Not really in the city.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't see them like wandering around Oxford Street. Or
Yeah, exactly.
Like
in other cities, it's like in San Francisco. Like when you the central town is the bad bit. That's the first time I saw somebody shooting up, just like in the street. Just in downtown San Francisco, like with all the buildings where people go to work and the offices.
You'll see it in Dublin, like on O'Connell Street, which is the main thoroughfare of Dublin.
It's
see
crazy.
Somebody just skagging out, like in a
like nodding out.
Yeah, like totally like.
Yeah.
They're just shot up. They'll have their bags down around their ankles. So
Yeah,
they're shot into their, you know, they're shooting heroin in their leg or in their penis or whatever. And
I got him doing it in between his toes. You know, feeding it between his toes, because I saw this great picture. There's this like photography like collection I found it on Flickr of where it was in Portugal, in Lisbon, where they had all these heroin addicts. A place called Casal Vimento or something like that. I can't remember the name. Casal Vimento. It's like way outskirts of Lisbon, but it was basically like it was like these. You know, you see those apartment blocks in Europe. You know, those big ones. It was just that, and it was just all heroin addicts. Apparently, it was so normal there that somebody that went there to take pictures saw an old lady sell heroin out of the window and give the person a bowl of soup with it. Like it was just so normalized, you know.
Yeah.
And even when I lived there, I lived there in 2000 and 2001. They decriminalized all the drugs in 2001. I don't remember what it was like there, but my dad used to tell me to watch out certain places because they were heroin addicts, and how he used to see them pick their faces in the mirrors of the car mirrors, so it looked like they had like AIDS, so that they could beg for money. So they'd be just sitting in the mirrors, like picking, like in the car mirrors, picking their face. God. I know it's such a crazy part, and obviously there are loads of books that talk about it. A lot of the time written by people that have actually done it. So it's one of those very sort of like, you know, intimidating.
That nervous, like, that you feel?
Yeah,
to get the details right and the.
Well, I try to keep it vague. You know, I'm not going to be there on like the process of like how he does it, because I feel like if you are a heroin addict, you do that, and that's just like, you know, putting milk in the coffee. You know, so it's like, why would you focus on it in the writing?
You wouldn't be describing a manual for how to do it.
Exactly, yeah, because if it's the fact as well that it's in first person present, it's about recreating consciousness. Effectively, it's about recreating perception with words. So like when you're in the room, what is it that you're looking at? And what's helped me loads with that idea is goal oriented perception. And it's this idea, you know, that we see things with like through goals, so we don't see the world as objects, and then we sort of like break it down, like in an AI, for example, when they're trying to make like driving cars, they have to map everything out to find the borders around certain things. The way that we see it is actually goal oriented, you know, because if you see something, you know, this is a thing to hold water in, but if somebody comes in and is like getting all leery and going to attack you, that becomes something to throw, and it changes what it is, you know, it changes the actual thing itself. And that's what I found, recreating perception and consciousness in first person present tense is being like on trying to be like blind and then have the things, as opposed to having the room there and choosing. It's to be totally blind and then putting the things in there, you know, sort of reverse engineering it.
As you know, I've spent some time being a bull. So yeah, that was a very kind of part of that was kind of choosing what I think a bull would notice or the way they'd see the world.
Yes.
Yeah, there is a real. It is all about like the focus, isn't it? About what they want.
Yeah.
And like what their drive would be. Therefore, how would they describe these things? I mean, it's interesting that you've mentioned that, because the Golding bit that you're going to read next is very much about like everything's alive. It's kind of like the way they view the world. You know, the log in the story or the bit you're going to read, it moves. They talk about it moving itself.
Yeah.
It's like things have a life, kind of. Like everything is interconnected in the Neanderthal's mind.
Yeah, they don't understand. Like he goes there and he doesn't see it, and he closes his eyes, and then he opens them again, and he's like, "But I remember it being there, and he talks about the pictures in his head.
Yeah.
So I remember, like, the picture is the memory of where they used to cross the river, and he gets there and it's not the same, and he just doesn't know why it's not the same.
Yeah.
And there's a great bit later on in the book, because it's, you know, they get hunted by a pack of humans, where somebody shoots an arrow at them, and the arrow hits into the tree behind him, and he sees it as the arrow growing out of the tree.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand that they're being attacked.
Being fired. Yeah,
To
he
kill it.
hasn't got that. He hasn't got an understanding of that technology.
Well,
That's
yeah,
not
and
in
then
his model of the world.
as it goes on, and he starts to realize, oh my god, it's such a great book, because it all clicks for them, and it's just the tension of them like running away. Because it's set in Marlborough, in England. You know, he went to the Savernake forest.
Yeah.
I always say that wrong. And we went there because it's literally where Emma lives, you know, my girlfriend. And we went walking through it, and it's such an old forest, you know, where the trees have died and new trees have grown on top. You can tell how old it is. And I was walking around there, and you just know that this is like where he got this inspiration from.
Yeah.
And then we got in the car, we're driving home, sort of driving around, and then I turn and I look, there's this huge mound, like a pyramid of mud, you know, just like grass. I'm like, what's that? She's like, oh, it's just like a Neolithic mound. What? And then I turn and I look, and then there are all these big rocks that have been there. This Avebury, you know, you know, Avebury rock, the Avebury Mound and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just there. It's just like sheep. So we just pulled over and just went walking around. And we see all these things, and that's where roundabouts where he lived. So it must have been. He must have been. He doesn't talk about
Seeping
Avebury.
into his consciousness.
Yes, being in that part of Wiltshire, it must have just been so like fertile, all these stories like in his mind, to be able to imagine what it would be like, because it was all there. You don't have to imagine, you know it was there, you know, just by these huge, like, they were just like, why is the mound there? They don't know why the mound's there, so it's like, it's just there now, like crazy. And there's sheep just walking around, you just do what you want. You know, it's mental.
Can you give us a blast of that then?
Yeah.
You wrote this while working as a teacher. There's hope for me.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully, John.
Well, he wrote it in like 2 weeks or something crazy.
I
So
probably wouldn't be able to do
yeah. Locke was running as fast as he could. His head was down, and he carried his thorn bush horizontally for balance, and smacked the drifts of vivid buds aside with his free hand. Liku rode him laughing, one hand clutched in the chestnut curls that lay on his neck and down his spine, the other holding the little oar tucked under his chin. Locke's feet were clever. They saw. They threw him round the displayed roots of the beeches, leapt when a puddle of water lay across the trail. Liku beat his belly with her feet. Faster, faster! His feet stabbed, he swerved and slowed. Now they could hear the river that lay parallel but hidden to their left. The beeches opened, the bush went away, and they were in the little patch of flat mud where the log was. There, Liku. The onyx marsh water was spread before them, widening into the river. The trail along by the river began again on the other side, on ground that rose until it was lost in the trees. Locke, grinning happily, took 2 paces towards the water and stopped. The grin faded, and his mouth opened till the lower lip hung down. Liku slid to his knee, then dropped to the ground. She put the little oar's head into her mouth and looked over her. Locke laughed uncertainly. The log has gone away. He shut his eyes and frowned at the picture of the log. It had lain in the water, from this side to that, grey and rotting. When you trod the centre, you could feel the water that washed beneath you, horrible water, as deep in places as a man's shoulder. The water was not awake like the river or the fall, but asleep, spreading there to the river and waking up, stretching on the right into wildernesses of impassable swamp and thicket and bog. So sure was he of this log that people always used, that he opened his eyes again, beginning to smile as if he were waking out of a dream, but the log was gone. Far came trotting along the trail. The new one was sleeping on her back. She did not fear that he would fall, because she felt his hands gripping her hair at the neck and his feet holding the hair farther down her back, but she trotted softly so that he should not wake. Locke heard her coming before she appeared under the beeches. Far! The log has gone away! She came straight to the water's edge, looked, smelt, then turned accusingly to Locke. She did not need to speak. Locke began to jerk his head at her. No, I did not move the log to make the people laugh. It has gone. He spread his arms wide to indicate the completeness of the absence, saw that she understood, and dropped them again. Liku called him. Swing me! She was reaching for a beech bough that came down out of the tree like a long neck, saw light and craned up with an armful of green and brown buds. Locke abandoned the log that was not there and swung her into the crook. He heaved sideways. He pulled, gaining a little backwards with each step as the bough creaked. Ho! He let the branch go and dropped onto his hams. The bough shot up and Liku shrieked delightedly. No, no! But Locke hauled again and again and the armful of leaves bore Liku shrieking and laughing and protesting along the edge of the water. Far was looking from the water to Locke and back. She was frowning again. Har came along the trail, hurrying but not running, more thoughtful than Locke, the man for an emergency. When Far began to call out to him, he did not answer her immediately, but looked at the empty water and then away to the left, where he could see the river beyond the arch of beeches. Then he searched the forest with ear and nose for intruders, and only when he was sure of safety did he put down his thornbush and kneel by the water. Look! His pointing finger showed the gashes under water where the log had moved. The edges were still sharp and pieces of broken earth lay in the gashes, had not yet disintegrated by the water that covered them. He traced the curving gashes away down into the water until they disappeared in that obscurity. Far looked across to the place where the broken trail began again. There was earth churned up there where the other end of the log had lain. She asked a question of Har, and he answered her with his mouth. 1 day, perhaps 2 days, not 3. Liku was still shrieking with laughter. Neil came in sight along the trail. She was moaning gently, as was her habit when tired and hungry. But though the skin was slack on her heavy body, her breasts were stretched and full, and the white milk stood in the nipples. Whoever else went hungry, it would not be the new one. She glanced at him as he clung to Far's hair, saw that he was asleep, then went to Har and touched him on the arm. Why did you leave me? You have more pictures in your head than Locke. He pointed to the water. I came quickly to see the log, but the log has gone away. The three of them stood and looked at each other. Then, as so often happened with the people, there were feelings between them. Far and Neil shared a picture of Har thinking. He had thought that he must make sure the log was still in position, because if the water had taken the log, or if the log had crawled off on business of its own, then the people would have to trek a day's journey round the swamp, and that meant danger or even more discomfort than usual. I'll stop there because it's an interesting part to talk about.
Yeah.
That we just finished. This, they describe it as a psychic communication that they have.
Seeing the same pictures in their head.
Yes,
You know.
but that is the way that I like to see it. It's William Golding, because he understood all this stuff about like intuition and the way that you can personalize ideas. So you make something, if you turn like the Greek gods, like the god of wine, you personalize the idea of getting drunk. You turn that feeling of wanting to get drunk or being drunk, and you turn that side of yourself into a god. And that what he's doing with this psychic communication is just the explanation of the intuition. Because we can do that. Humans look at each other and we both know that we're thinking the same thing. You just look at each other, just give a little look. But how would you know that without saying, "Oh, we were psychic"? It's hard to say it, but in this one, you can just be psychic because that's how it was. There is no difference between the log being there and not being there, and it's like the first 4, 5, 6 pages just talking about how the log's gone. I just think it's one of those books that you kind of have to just keep reading it and not go back if you don't understand. You just have to just keep going because he locks you in to this prehistoric consciousness, because it's all Neanderthal. And as obviously this was written ages ago, but as more stuff is being learned about Neanderthals, there more people are coming out and being like, it's pretty good, like what he wrote in this. In terms of Neanderthals weren't just like stupid. They had clothes and makeup. They copied us a lot, you know, interbred with the humans.
Yeah, I read in the introduction to that book that actually they found that there's like up to 5% of Neanderthal DNA in humans.
Yeah. You can see it, and there's other humans.
Some would say I've got more than 5%.
No, but there are certain countries that have more. There are, and you can kind of tell, you know.
Slippery slope that though.
Yeah. No, but Denisovan, which is another human species, they are the DNA of the Denisovans are found in like Australasia. So the Aboriginals in Australia and the islands, because there were. What's interesting about this, obviously, they're being hunted by the group of humans, like the last Neanderthal group being hunted by humans, is that when you see like the line of the humans, you know, it's like monkey and then I'm a man. You think that that's evolution in terms of it was this one, linear progression. But we existed on the planet with loads of different kinds of humans at the same time.
Well, 1,000 years we were living with Neanderthals.
Well, Neanderthals, and then you go further back, Denisovans, and they all had like arts. They found this like Denisovan bracelet that was like I think it was made of this like green mineral or rock. So it was very ornate. It wasn't just like stick, you know. It was very ornate, and it had something that would be put onto it. So they had culture. So we were living with different species that had culture, which is just, for me, it's like, my mind, when I read this, I just get taken back in time, you know, and I'm just there, just thinking about it. And what it helps with writing and with stories, when you go back to that time, you know, thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ago, and you examine it, and obviously you read about it and you learn about it, you realize the fundamentals of human behavior. You realize how there are only a finite amount of things that we can do because we're just bodies. Even in our mind, there's only a finite amount of thoughts that you can think, right?
There's an infinite permutations of those things.
Exactly.
Like we're finite in terms of what we can do, but we're infinite in terms of what the series of things we can do them in.
And the dressing on top,
swap and change, and
exactly. And it's the repurposing, the rework, and that's what humans do the best. You know, what I was going to talk about in the origins and history of consciousness, what he talks about with this old consciousness. Obviously it's not the same as this, you know, this isn't real. It's the idea of knowing that for example, jealousy and anger and hatred and stuff is something that we have always felt and that we feel today. So whenever I'm trying to like figure out a story or some sort of character, to strip back all of the cultural dressing and then just to have like just the bare human like behavior, the bare human patterns of behavior, and then you can add like the dressing on top. That's what I found has helped a lot in terms of giving depth to characters. I used to find it really, really hard to make people, to give character, you know how they say it needs more characterization. And then what I would do is I would just make them a bit of a dickhead. You know, that's characterization. I'm going to be a bit of a prat to people, you know, or like do something, just a little quirk that's just a normal person telling somebody to fuck off, or they're just grumpy.
So that's a kind of top down rather than bottom up approach, isn't it? Which doesn't really work with characterization. You know, when you're trying to add stuff on when you haven't actually got the base right.
Exactly.
You have to you have to understand the core rules that these people work by. And if you understand those rules, then the other shit kind of writes itself.
Exactly, and that's what I meant about these patterns of behaviour that are just, you know, that go throughout time. We've always got it. Relationships with parents, you know, and with siblings. You think about you would have had sibling rivalry. You know, going back, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So it's about, you know, finding the pattern. So the ones that you're reading in this one, the ones of the connection with the mother and the loss of the father, I found in my work it's always about the ma is there and the pa's gone. And that's in my first book as well. And I found out, obviously in this story that I was reading, he's with the mum, and the mum is very tough, but is also very controlling. And then the dad is not there. So it's about this breaking away from the mum and then going to then either try to become a man without your dad, or to go and then find your dad. And that's just the oldest story ever. You know, it's the oldest story ever. You know, of just breaking away from the Star Wars, everything. Star Wars, Lion King. You know, if you go, what's it called? What was I saying? Yeah, if you go back with the mother, it's a biological story. It's not a story like
it's an origin story, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not like, I don't know how to explain it. It's not a story because it's something that happens.
Yeah.
It's not
a story we tell because it's something that happens in our lives all the time.
Yeah,
that's
so
why we return to it, because it's it has a resonance that's like,
it's like a story is something that you like make up, but it's like biology. It's like a story that Mother Nature tells, like over the course of history.
Do you believe then that like great stories or great books are kind of tapping into a universal truth of some kind? Is that like
Always.
Is that where you think?
Always.
Yeah.
Always. Because as an individual, when I'm doing something creative, or anybody doing anything creative, you are tapping in to a level of subconsciousness that is shared. That's why when music comes around,
Jungian kind of consciousness type thing.
Well, yeah, the collective unconscious is a little bit different in terms of its instinct represented in image. You know, I think we spoke about this before. You know, like when, I'm not sure if you've had this dream of getting punched in a dream, or or doing the punching super slow. Yeah. You know that one, or waking up
Lead
as someone.
Yeah.
Getting something thrown at you and waking up and jolting. These are just instincts that you have. The instinct to flinch, being represented, like your brain makes up a story where the instinct is like manifest. Yeah. So a ball gets thrown in the face, and then you can imagine going back 1,000 years, maybe some tribal boy has a dream about a stone getting thrown in his face, and he wakes up like that. So it's this collective unconscious is a little bit different, because these are the things that just reach like so far back, that you can go to any country and there will be those signs for it. It doesn't matter where you go to. If you go to the Aboriginals in Australia, or the ones in South America, they just have these motifs that are just concurrent.
The archetypes,
the archetypes.
Jungian archetypes.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't see the arguments against it. I don't see the arguments against it.
That these, people were growing up, the tribes or whatever were at similar levels of kind of development. They had, like the Neanderthals there, for example, they have a way of thinking about the world that was shared for all Neanderthals. So, in the right circumstances, they're going to come up with similar ideas because that's what their environment is. Yeah. So that would be the Marxist interpretation.
Right,
There's no such thing as these fucking archetypes.
Right.
These are just socially constructed by your economic, social milieu of the time. It's not like there's kind of like pure forms floating in the ether waiting for you to kind of, I don't know what I think about it.
Yeah. Well, okay,
sometimes I do wonder where inspiration comes from, but maybe that's kind of this kind of mystification of arts, the writer as the seer, or the writer as the kind of
and like calling on the muse or something. Yeah.
It is a bit kind of. It is a bit.
It's a bit like hooky kooky.
And a bit kind of.
No, I wouldn't say it's elitist, because everybody can access it.
Yeah, can they though? Because what you're going to
people do creative stuff. So, for example, when I was doing my stuff for university, I was looking at creativity and like, what's the definition of creativity? What makes something creative? Yeah. One of the ones was like whether it makes a change in the world, or whether it does this, whether it does that. But what I found especially with language, the working class and the upper class have this love of language. Yeah. That the sort of suburban middle class, we've lost it.
You're sitting in the suburbs here with me.
Exactly, and I grew up in the suburbs. I have the same problem. No, I have the same. No, I was the same thing. I grew up in a suburb of London. I don't have that Del Boy, like, you're right, all right, son, governor. I don't have that, and I wish I did. But then I don't have the upper class posh thing of being able to be all like, and have all these like nicknames for people, and have all these like
with the middle class.
Yes, exactly. Just like the mundane. Yeah, exactly.
To work for a living.
So that plain language that's done then is creative. Yeah. It's just that you don't have the opportunities to do it. It's not, like I was saying before, it's not the space that they're in that makes them. They're in Australia and then in the rainforest, two totally different places, yet they keep coming up with the same images. How? It's not to do with them, like maybe once remembering it from before. Like I said, the story of the son with the mum is a story in terms of it happens, it's happening. And it did happen, we turned it into a story.
It's a model for the world. It's a model. That's why those kind of, they talk about the 7 plots or the 27 plots. Or
Yeah.
Depending on what script guru you choose to read, and they talk about these kind of,
There's that massive fuck off book, isn't it? Like the 7 plots,
There's the Voyage and Return.
Yes.
Call to Arms. All these kind of ones. And I guess the argument there is that like the reason why we reproduce these stories is because that's how we kind of think about the world. They're kind of they're the stories we tell ourselves to understand our reality. And what I've gone back to the kind of the Aborigines in the desert versus kind of whatever tribe in the jungle.
Yeah.
Why did they come up with similar stories? Well, I guess maybe they're at a similar kind of development in terms of kind of where they are in the world. So they're going to come up with similar stories, because that's...
To help them deal with what's going on.
That's the narrative they're using to understand the world as it is. I mean, I'm really interested in that kind of way of thinking, that like... I mean, your man John York Into the Woods, do you remember?
Yeah, John York, yeah.
And his whole thing about, like, we have 3 acts because when we break down how we learn, we look at the world, we have a thesis, basically, for a model of the world. And then something new happens, Act 2, and then we have to synthesize this new thing. So the example he gives is like a child doesn't know about fire, and then they see a match being struck, and then they have to synthesize fire into their model of the world. So he argues that like basically we learn in 3 acts. We have a thesis, and then we have an antithesis, something that doesn't go with our old model of the world, and then we have to synthesize it in the 3rd act.
Well, the 3 is everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's the beginning, middle, and the end.
Yeah.
Something isn't, it is, and then it's not. And that, unless
you're Flann O'Brien when he starts his novel 3 times.
Yeah, exactly.
3 different openings.
Yeah.
You gotta love Flann.
Oh. I can't read him because I just end up writing like him because it's just so ridiculous. You know what I mean? I just just going off on all these crazy tangents.
The first book I wrote, Pink Flamingo Soup, is basically me trying to be Flann O'Brien.
Yeah.
Way off the map. Yeah.
But no, so it's not that, it's not when I say story, like these biological stories, not a story like a complete story, but I mean so the BBC did the documentary and it's called Dynasties. Yeah. The first episode, have you seen it?
No.
So the first episode of Dynasties is about a group of chimpanzees. This
I've
jungle.
seen some of these. Yeah.
So tribe in the jungle. And the leader David is like old.
Dave.
Dave. Makes it a lot less biblical when it's Dave. When it's David, he's like the king of the troop. Yeah. But he's the leader of the troop. He's old, and then he has these battles, like these hierarchical like battles where he has no friends, and then people start to gang up on him, and then he gets beaten up and thrown away, and he almost dies, and then he comes back, and there's this big redemption story. And it's like it's Shakespeare in nature, and it's happening right now. And no one has to write the story about it. Like Mother Nature is telling those stories, and I almost hesitant to use the word story because once you put it here, that's when it becomes not universal. That's when you make it like subjective, because I can't not be subjective, because I am a subject. Even with the objective things that I write about, it's through my eyes. Yeah,
you're choosing what you're.
Yeah, I'm choosing
selecting.
what it is that I'm choosing the objective facts to say. Because I can't just say all the facts at once. So those stories are like they're happening. They're there and they're happening, and it's that's what I'm talking about when I'm looking for those patterns of behavior. So you could take that king, no friends, gets beaten up by the people that want it, gets thrown away, comes back, redemption story. That is like we played out the story before we wrote it down.
Yeah,
our ancestors played out the story so many times.
It's our inheritance.
Yeah, exactly. And then we started to write them down and figure it out.
So do you think about that when you're writing? Do you think to yourself, okay, are you a top down or bottom up kind of? Do you believe that when you're going into the story, I'm going to write a story that follows this pattern, or are you a believer and kind of go in there and these patterns emerge organically? Do you know what I mean? Do you impose a structure on a novel, or do you kind of wait for one to emerge?
I was never good with structure. I've definitely been planning a lot more, because I know that if you don't, then you're sort of you can go down dead ends that take a year to get out of, literally. Just writing like a whole third act that you just don't like, and it's like, what did I do that for?
I don't even like this character.
Yeah, exactly. I must have deleted 30,000 words from the first rewrites of the book for the course. But no, it's not like that. I mean, so you can explain it in a way. Obviously, being an English teacher, the kid's like, yeah, but does the blue door really mean sadness, or is it just the blue door? I used to do the same thing with my teachers. Did he really mean that though, sir? It's like, yeah, but maybe not. And then it's like, okay, maybe not. As a writer, maybe I didn't mean that. Yeah. But the whole point is, when you're writing a book, you are in the story space. Yeah. So the words on the page, the story, the story exists here as well. Yeah. And that's where you'd be drawing from. Yeah. So maybe he didn't mean for the blue door to be. I didn't consciously think, the blue door is going to mean sadness. But when you are the author and you're writing it, and you're in a scene that is sad, the color comes to you as blue. Yeah, of course. That's the color that comes to you. Yeah. And it's not this false thing, and that's what I got when I did my tutoring as well. It's like, it doesn't matter if the author meant it or not. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It's about when you're in that state, and you feel this, when you're in the flow state, when you're writing, or when you're just coming up with things, you can sometimes solve your own your own little mystery, the setup, and then the completion. You didn't even realize. Yeah. You go, oh my god, I just did something really clever there. Yeah. You don't even think about it. Yeah. And how is that possible? And it's because when you're in that state, when you're in the story world in your mind, you don't know the connections that you're making. Yeah. And that's why magic can happen in a book, where you get the planning and that extra spice of just that unconscious inspiration, that sort of subconscious intrusion. There's the knowledge, and it's always emotional. It's always something where it's not like I accidentally added in a car crash or something like that. You can't do those bits, but it's those emotional flares that you go, oh my god, that totally sets up. That I set something up there and it totally finishes it with just this one line. But that's what I believe. Cool. You believe something.
What are you going to read for us next?
Okay, so next, let me just find it. Okay. So what I did with this one, I did a lot of translation into Hebrew. Cool. Just to try and figure it out, and I realized that we use so many Hebrew words. Like yada 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 yada. That's the Hebrew word for voice. Okay. I'll just read a little bit of this one because it's a bit. Yeah, we'll see. Ema is up all night screaming. Lod and 2 others of his age wait outside with sharps. They are made to think that they are on guard, but it was the woman. She did not want them to witness. Gran Ema washes her hands, her wrists, her hands, her wrists. The salt itches. It cleanses and wipes away the blood from between Ema's legs, the blood that flows from within her. Zum zum, she says, it's coming. Ema bites down on cloth, and the pressure that starts from her life is churned by her knotting jaw. Her life opens in 2 pale feet, red and blue like nothing else. Gran Ema snatches the feet and quickly pulls because she knows there's a chance of it being rejected, of life's curl around its neck because it was not good enough. 3 this fall, not good enough. What do? Ema screams and tears the back of her throat, and the blood tastes thick and from the ground like liquid stone. She can see Gran Ema's face chewed with concentration, and maybe it's true, she thinks. Maybe it's true, nothing can be born here. It is true, Gran Ema thinks. The curl, giver of life, now the serpent of death. The child's face is blue, like a sunset sky, but it waves its limbs about as if treading water. She does not say who can and cannot be born here, but 3 in one fall, 3 before the stay rain comes. There is no one here, no one to witness. She says Sav Sabah. Between her teeth, she splits the serpent, and the child's scream comes forth, knowing it's late. The smell of it all will always be the same. What happened? Ema asks. It's over. Granima appears with her lips stained with blood and the crying baby in her arms. Zum, she says, this one lives. Your mouth. He was good enough, I saw it, she says. I saw the kabar beating in his chest. Ema takes the child and dunks him in the water. Granima wraps the child in cloth. Adamu, she says, and kisses his forehead. His name is Adamu, and it is what you make. Lod and the others outside look to each other for recognition. Yes, the screaming has changed, from Ema to child. It screams, but not like Ema did, like she wanted something to stop. Instead, it's like a wild thing, like a wanting dog. Should we see? Lod asks them. No, we protect. The old man nods to the rest of the Baal who warm their hands on the fire. It is yours, Yol. You go. It is yours, Yol says to himself, as he makes for the place with light inside. It is yours. It is something he knows now, yet he is curious, suspicious, as if he is walking into the mouth of a cave without the light of fire to guide him. Lod raises his sharp and the others copy. Away, Yol says. It is done. As the boys leave, he calls inside. It's Yol. Before he strips back the door, Gran Ema wipes the blood away from her mouth. It's a boy, Ema says. Adamu. My Adamu, he says, and kisses the fresh forehead. Breathe deep, Gran Ema says. The smell will soon be gone. Yol again breathes the head of his Adamu. He lives. Unwrapping him, Yol inspects Adamu's life. We cut him? For Oa? In 7 sleeps, Yol, Ema says. You know this. 7 sleeps, he says to himself, and paints a picture of the past where he has slept and awoken with the sun still shining, just darker, or maybe brighter. You tell me when, he says. Tell me when, and I'll cut him. Gran Ema scratches at his hairy shoulder, then strokes it neat. You're good. Adamu lives. But Adamu does not sleep. He cries. Even at Ema's breast he cries. It makes him sick. He sits on Ema's shoulder as Gran Ema sings, and Lod and the boys and Chava and the girls listen. Among them they whisper about the sound of the child that they learn is named Adamu. But Adamu does not know its name. It only cries out as if wanting to spit up the yada in his throat. This happened to me, Chava says to her friends. Mother told me of times when she was young like me, and I was young like Adamu, and I cried just the same. When? A friend asks. Mother is old, yours and mine. Before. Lod selects a soft stone from the dusty floor. It smells like warm, like sun on your back with legs in the stream. Its shape caresses his hand and makes his own hand dusty and smooth. His hand and the stone greet and begin to learn everything about each other. Throw it, his friend says. At the girls, watch them run. Before he can, it's snatched out of his grasp and his stone is taken and hurled at Chava. The girls laugh as it lands weakly before them, and then they bare the backs of their arms. The other boys start laughing and baring the backs of their arms too, tensing the strength beneath. The old man clacks 2 bone sharps together. They can hear him from inside his place. They tuck their chins between their chests, into their chests, and move into the brush. Branch swingers, Chava hisses. The old man sits beneath the candle flame, hunched over the coal, searching. Some letterings have been wet and bled into one another. Some letterings are in a language he only vaguely recalls. It's the images he knows. The shape of the page paints a picture of the past. Stories of others gathered by him and his before. He can easily take himself back. All those people of different skin, of ashen complexion, and those the colour of milk with hair on fire. The journeys on camelback by his father's side, sleeps without food, only water. And the pictures, they come back, of the story about a vast stream of water. But these are not the right stories. Since the first rejection, he began again his ritual of memorising the coal line by line, day by day. And after each rejection, he stumbled more and more. The words didn't come to him. His mind was becoming like the others. Gran Ema perches on a root of the tree that stands on a rise, making it high enough to look over the village. She gnaws chunks of root and stashes them in her leather. The other women are dunking their cloth into the water roads. With 2 of the water roads being fixed, the women have to share the other 2 between them. Since then, cloth smells different, like it has a bad taste, and the men are out and packing the water roads so that in a few sleeps things will be back to normal. In the air, Adamu cries. His voice stretches over the village. Zum, Oa will hear, she says. Please. The taste of the serpent lingers in her mouth. I'll end that one there.
Excellent. So biblical.
Yeah.
It's like got this kind of like, you know, the simplicity and the kind of
Parabolesque kind of.
Well, this is the village, because it is like I'm dipping in between the village, and the way that it plays out. My idea did come from the Bible, the Old Testament, and when you get these,
it has that feel. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that very, and it's the naming as well. I think
yeah, it's all I went on the Hebrew translate.
Yeah, but like,
Yeah.
cool.
And you realise, like, obviously, like all those words that go back again, very monosyllabic. These like old school words that's just, you don't need anything more, because it's such a yeah. My idea in this, because when you think about these old stories, like the Tower of Babel, for example, it's not a story about people that build something. It's about this.
Hubris.
It's a story of the consolidation of power. It's of monopolies, of something trying to become too big. Everyone speaking the same language, no diversity of thought. All these ideas packed into this one story about building something. That when you think that story was written 4,000 years ago, let's say, but it was written by people that had taken all these other stories and condensed them down into the fundamental parts,
them again, yeah.
and rearranged them, but condensed it down to its meaning. So if you imagine, over the course of history, you see all these villages that they try to do something and they'll fail, and then maybe somebody survives and they go to another village and be like, oh yeah, we did this. Or like they forget. So the big thing I've got is forgetting, because the whole idea in the book of consciousness is that when you're in a state, or like a sort of prehistoric consciousness state, there's no memory. The reason why we can learn is because we can remember, but a dog doesn't remember certain things. Like if he accidentally opens the door, he will never know. Like he will never know that that's because I opened the door. So this idea of like memory and forgetting and having levels of consciousness that are higher. So the old man's trying to teach these people, like how to do stuff. But then it's like the pyramids. The Egyptians living with the pyramids didn't know how they were built. Yeah. They don't know how they were built. It's like they're thousands of years older than who they are. So like Cleopatra, is closer in time to us than the building of the Great Pyramids. Yeah. So they're just walking around with these pyramids, these huge things. Like, who built that? I don't know. Like they have this sort of. I think regression is so antithetical to how we think. Yeah. We always think we're in a constant slow incline as time goes on.
For human development is that we're kind of going in one direction.
Yes, upwards, and that we're always moving.
Degenerate, things can be forgotten.
And I think that's what's happening now. We have this thing where it's like we don't think that we can regress. It's just always progression. So I know you need to have your wits about you, otherwise things will. Like where I live in Cliftonville, I look at pictures from the 50s and the 60s. Amazing, like super nice town. All the things open. The fountain in the park had water in it. The fountain. Now it's just like all the crackheads. So places can be worse. Like in the future, it's not just this constant. Because of all the films and books, unless it's dystopian, things in the future are better. Like more advanced and more like this and more like that. Whereas regression is just something that we just can't.
Dark ages can happen, right?
Dark ages can happen.
I think it's partially to do with kind of because science is such a kind of dominating narrative of the way we kind of understand the world these days. The scientific method is always kind of built on kind of adding on knowledge. We're always making advances in our understanding of the world kind of thing. I think people then think that that's how the world. It's kind of like inevitable that's how they think that the world will always develop in one direction, because that's how science works, if you know what I mean.
But yeah, and it's this crazy science thing. Yeah, it's like science. Have you seen these things like we're following the best science, not all the rubbish science? Or the way that they spoke about it, like it's like we have found a new piece of science. Like they're digging a hole looking for science. We found some new science. It's like, no, man, it's not. That's not how it's meant to be. This crazy like obsession with science, because I think I said this yesterday. Our Renaissance is technology, not arts or culture or anything like that, or thoughts or speech or anything. It's just this constant like microphones and getting better and better and better, and cameras getting better. All the best minds are making technology, not making stuff. So us people, we see science as the thing that is bettering our lives, so we're focusing on that, when what science doesn't tell you is the how to act. You know, it tells you what things are, but it doesn't tell you how to act. And that's what everyone's just running around like headless chickens now.
Have you ever seen the Brecht play about Galileo? It's fascinating. It's basically it's about what you're talking about there. It's kind of like Brecht argues that when Galileo rescinds his findings because he's been threatened by the church, that's when science decouples itself from morality, or from kind of having anything to say about how you should act, because Galileo basically lies to save his own ass, right? He says that his science isn't true,
Right.
so because he's kind of and by doing that he's rejecting his role as as a setter of kind of morals of how he should act, and how much responsibility science has, not only for what it finds but how it presents it and how it kind of interacts with the world. By kind of stepping away and allowing himself to lie and not own his findings, he's kind of decoupling science from any kind of like social responsibility, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, exactly. So if his conclusion was that the Earth was not the center of the universe, as an objective fact, it's like, okay, but it's the metaphorical meaning attached to being the center of something, and not being the thing that everything revolves around. You see what I mean? So I guess, especially back in those days, it was all like emotional. There was no like objectivity. But what's interesting as well with science and religion is this searching for truth in the Christian faith, the truth, to the point where you're like, well, truth now, the truth that you've been searching for is now the thing that you're using to discredit the book that got you to search for the truth, right? And that's what all the scientists, because when you go back, all the scientists were religious. So, like Isaac Newton was wasn't he like a pagan? No, he was like a Gnostic.
Was he?
Charles Darwin did like seances. All this crazy stuff that we don't learn about, But yeah, Charles Darwin, I think the guy that he worked with was mental. Yeah. It was really weird stuff.
There's a lot of very prominent figures in that era who were into kind of seances, and like Yeats, W.B. Yeats was big into the whole...
Oh, it was a huge thing. Jung studied it, and he did his dissertation on it, I think, on the paranormal, and not the paranormal, like the abnormal, because it is very much about intuition. It's the looking at the studying of intuition, to cold read. Like, he's not really a psychic. So, but you try that. Do you know what I mean? You try and stand up in a room and guess that someone's nan has like died last week. You wouldn't be able to do that. It's amazing.
I don't think he's. Well, I think when that stuff, personally, this is my opinion. I mean, when people do that, I think they have a skill, but I don't think it's reading minds or...
No, it's not reading minds.
It's
intuition.
It's
all intuition. Yeah, it's all about communication and intuition. It's understanding body language. Darren Brown is amazing.
They're reading signals that you don't know that you're giving off. Basically.
Precisely, which could be considered mind reading.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm not hearing the words that are coming out of your mouth, how am I understanding what you're saying? Yeah. But it's because the little eyebrow twitches or the little idiosyncrasies that we all have.
It's the language they use as well. They'll kind of fish.
The fishing.
They'll start with something and then they'll watch where you're going.
There's a vowel in it.
And then they'll watch your reaction, and those reactions kind of guide them towards what's in what you want them to think about you, basically.
Yeah, because I've seen it. You see it done. I went to Darren Brown's show, and he explains how he does it. He gets you to stand on stage. He guesses your job, and he says something. Oh, you've done that, and he lays it out for you, kind of. He doesn't keep it all like secretive. That's what is great about him, the understanding of the way that if you say, like, I don't know how he does it. If you just say yes or no in your head. And then it's something, I don't know how he gets it. It's just this whole other way of thinking. That's when you realise that as the human body can just do things that you just don't even know that you can do. Like that Wim Hof guy, heard about him. How he can make his nervous system works, so he can fight off a cold. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like
the guy who was climbing mountains with no clothes on.
Yeah, with no clothes on. Yeah.
Control his
Yeah,
body
yeah.
temperature and
Yeah,
stuff.
because you can. Yeah. Oh, that guy that can like swallow snooker balls, and then like with different numbers on them, and it's like 7, and he goes, and he brings up number 7. How the hell are you doing that? But imagine all of these amazing feats of the human body packed into one person. That's a superhuman. That's like that's Superman.
Yeah.
But we can. So it is possible. Like the possibilities that we have, it is mad. But I don't know how we got to here from the book. But in terms of like the magic, that's probably where it was. Like the magic. Magic is just stuff that we don't understand yet.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm interested in magic. I think like for me, magic is it's the effort. It's like somebody's practiced something and a particular skill, and they've refined it to such a level that when we see them do whatever act it is, it's so it looks so effortless and natural, and we can't see the work or the kind of the workings behind the trick that makes it appear to be magic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I still think that's magic. I think that moment of like where the work manifests itself in one perfect moment of realization, where it's all the and it's the same in writing. I think
or like a good joke.
all the work that goes into it. Ultimately, though, you still need that flow state moment where all the work and all the grunt and all of the hours and the they come to fruition in a fucking that chapter when you write it and you go, fuck, that's good.
Yeah, exactly.
Nailed it.
And that's what it is. There's no just show it to the street, No, what with magic and all this stuff, it's like all this like hooky kooky stuff. Like I feel now in this this age that we're living in, we can't be moving further and further away from it, because it can't just be all material, all technological, all screens and pixels and everything. There's gonna be some break somewhere in terms of how we will choose to live our lives, or how we will choose to think, or what we choose to place value on. Writing is obviously the best thing, because throughout time you don't need anything apart from pen and paper. Or if you're like what's the guy that did the Gulag Archipelago, Solzhenitsyn, when he wrote his book, What Day in the Life of Ivan something, he memorized it in the Gulag. Just every day, just saying a sentence, memorizing that one, saying it so he knows that one, and then he says the next one, and then he says that one, and then that one, and then memorizes it, and goes back and keeps doing it. It's like, what the hell,
If you can do that.
Yeah, and these are the things that last, like stories, and it is magic when you talk about creating a picture in someone's head with just squiggles. It really is, and that's why to play with it in that story, the sort of the prehistoric one, is playing around with the interaction of magic back in the day, where things were just open to that idea. It wasn't like, well, that's not scientifically possible. It's just being open to these things where like the rituals and the doing the specific things, getting into those states of consciousness where you can transcend the individual, because that's what they would do. All these huge puberty rituals, becoming the man, like entering through this like usually it's like painful fire. It's
acting out the kind of the emotions in it,
or to embody the thing that you're going to become
with other people, so that we can we're sharing our understanding of the world, so that we feel connected, right?
Why don't we do that
together?
What have we got? We've got Christmas, which is just turned into
we've got
commercial.
We've got Club VD.
Club VD, exactly.
Reading books. We generate our own ceremonies.
Just get some fucking DMT in there. Next Club VD.
We've been talking for nearly 2 hours, Josh.
Have we actually?
Yeah, I think we're going to leave it there.
Okay, cool.
Thanks for coming in.
No worries.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it's been good fun.